Hi guys, it's Aisling back chatting to you again on the Waterstones vlog. This month I've got two book recommendations for you, one novel and one short story collection, both debuts. So to start off with, I've got Asymmetry by Isa Holliday. It follows the story of a young woman called Alice who is living in New York and she works in publishing. She's an editor. And she goes to this park every day and she sees this kind of older gentleman there, and she begins to see him every day or every week or so, and they get talking and then they begin a relationship. But it turns out that this elderly man is actually a famous author by the name of Ezra Blazer. He's actually been like a contender for a few Nobel Prizes and he's very, very famous. So they begin sort of a love affair, but it's very much done on his terms. You know, he calls her over when he wants her there and then kind of sort of jokingly asks her to leave when he's done with her. There's these brilliant passages throughout where they're just like lists of all of the gifts that Ezra has given to Alice, and these are anything from like sort of sweets that he would have eaten when he was a child to like rolls of $100 bills or like really expensive things, sort of like cashmere scarves or stuff like that. And also he kind of suggests a lot of authors for her to read. So there's actually passages from Camus, Henry Miller and Primo Levi and people like that all throughout the book, just dotted alongside the text of the story as well, which actually made for really sort of interesting reading because it sort of situated you in the mind of Alice and like what she was reading at the time and sort of feeding into what she was thinking. This book actually changes tack throughout then, because there's three sections. So the first section is just Alice and Ezra's relationship and kind of how that fares and his failing health and how that affects how they interact with one another and their lives together. Then the second section totally changes tack as we follow a young Iraqi American detained at an airport in London, and his name is Amar. This is actually kind of funny because earlier in the previous section, Alice is talking to Ezra, admitting that she actually has started writing now in her spare time and perhaps she wants to become a writer, and she muses that she doesn't think that a former choir girl from Massachusetts could get inside the consciousness of a Muslim man. But this is actually what Isa Holliday does exactly here, because she kind of it's sort of a stream of consciousness of Amar while he's stuck in this airport and they've taken his passport and he doesn't know what the problem is, and he's sort of sitting there and he's running through all his thoughts, and then we get some of his family history, and it's really quite complicated stuff in a good way and just very complex and impressive actually. So she was able to get inside the mind of a Muslim man. And then the third section, which I loved, is actually a really unbelievably convincing fictional desert island discs interview transcript with Ezra after he's finally won the Nobel Prize, because the first section, he keeps getting passed over for it, and now he's finally won. And it was just really, really amusing and a really, really original idea. That's what I loved about this novel actually, because I felt like the structure was really, really different, like quite a gamble. If someone described that structure to you, you would not think that would work as well as it did. Really, really unique. I haven't read anything like that. It's really clever, and it's kind of playing simplicity against complexity in that way, and it really, really just made me think. So if you're looking for a book to kind of leave you in sort of a quiet thoughtfulness, I would go for this one. Also, just a fact that I found out, well, maybe a fact that I found out while I was reading up for this video, was that Isa Holliday actually had a relationship with the late Philip Roth when she was in her 20s. So perhaps she's bringing some of her experiences from that relationship into this novel. I just thought that kind of like afterwards when I found that out added to my experience, because I was wondering then, oh, was Ezra Blazer actually Philip Roth? I wonder. So yeah, totally recommend guys. Really thoughtful, beautiful and simplistic, but also very intelligently complex. Totally recommend. Please pick it up. Then next I have actually debut short story collection, and it's Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. There's been actually a lot of talk online about her story that went sort of semi-viral, The Husband Stitch, which actually probably is my favourite story from this collection. It's really, really beautiful. It's quite a long story. It sort of challenges the idea of what it is like to be a woman and how sort of men control the bodies of women, but not exactly how I'm describing that. She kind of does this with her sort of trademark eerie, science fiction-y, horror voice, which is very, very focused on the female perspective. All of the stories are focused on the kind of female experience, which I really, really enjoyed. So the story, The Husband Stitch, which actually refers to the stitch that women can get down there after they've given birth, to keep things nice and tight. So straight away, it's kind of about like a woman's body used specifically for a man's pleasure. The main character herself, she's unnamed, but she is very clearly a homage to that old tale of the little girl with the green ribbon on her neck, and then at the end her head falls off. I think they're from that collection, In a Dark, Dark Room, one of those really old American horror stories. It's told as if she's a real person, so we go from her adolescence where she's kind of at this family party and she sees this boy that she really likes and she seduces him, and then they begin this big relationship and they get married and they have a child and everything. But it's really eerie and just something so unsettling all the way through. Machado, she kind of weaves other tales into this tale, so that she mentions, you know, that classic urban legend of the hook-handed murderer, and then the ghost of a woman who cut out her own liver. Like, these things just crop up, but it's really casual and just kind of slipped in there. Also, what I loved about that story is that there's stage directions. So actually the first thing you read in the whole collection is stage directions, and it's like, when you're using my voice, please be high pitched. When you are my husband, please be like this. And then, like, kind of as it goes on, it gets sort of more and more extreme. At one point she actually says, while you're reading this, ask one of your listeners to cut in between your index finger and your thumb, that little pad of flesh. So it gets really, really extreme and very, very visceral. But I definitely think this is a sophisticated collection of stories. I really, really enjoyed it, and it's not often, you know, if you are a fan of kind of eerie or scary sort of science fiction-y horror stuff, like, it's not often you see a book or a new author that actually kind of takes that sort of subject matter or material to the next level, which is why I really, really enjoyed this. I want to return again to the idea that it's all from sort of the female perspective, or focused on the female perspective. There's more stories where there's one, and it's a woman, it's called Inventory, and she's just recounting her sort of erotic experiences or sexual experiences, whatever you want to say, from sort of her first inception of the idea when she is a young child, all throughout her life. And again, it's not often you see that kind of thing in fiction these days. Then there's another one set in an apocalypse, with a woman sort of realising that now that everybody is dying or, you know, disappearing or whatever, there's going to be very little chance of sort of intimacy with another person. And then there's another brilliant story, which I loved, where women actually just start to fade away. And I love that concept. I thought it was brilliant. So yeah, if you're into kind of very eerie, strange stories, what I was thinking to myself earlier is, it was like as if Angela Carter and Stephen King had some sort of love child who had now grown up to write these amazing stories, but actually probably still better than what that person would be. It's amazing, it's fantastic. So yeah, that's Her Body and Other Stories by Carmen Maria Machado. Totally, wholeheartedly recommend, guys. Okay, so that's it for this month. I hope you enjoyed these picks, these recommendations for you guys, and I will see you again soon with another video. Okay, bye.